Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most intensely debated topics out there, the relationship between Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua, and the seventh-day Sabbath. For centuries, right, a really common narrative has suggested that he basically dismantled the Sabbath commandment. People often think he viewed it as this obsolete Jewish ritual that was meant to be replaced or just totally thrown out. But is that what the biblical and historical sources actually reveal? We're going to look really closely at the gospel records today to see if he truly abolished the Sabbath or if something much more profound was actually going on.
Okay, let's look at our roadmap so you know exactly where we're heading today. We'll start with whether it was abolished or restored, then we'll look at fulfilling the law, commandment versus human tradition, what Lord of the Sabbath means, address some objections, and finally, look at the true Edenic purpose.
Section 1. Abolished or restored. The ultimate rescue mission for a holy day.
So, we have to start by fundamentally reframing how we view Christ's actions. Did Yeshua break the Sabbath, or did he rescue it? When you carefully examine the sources, it becomes pretty clear that his clashes with the religious leaders weren't some rebellion against God's law. Not at all. Actually, he was stripping away all those suffocating layers of human rules to expose the life-giving, merciful intent of God's original creation. He didn't dismantle a ritual, you guys. He reclaimed a gift.
Section 2. Fulfilling the Law. We'll look at Christ's custom and his programmatic declaration.
To truly understand his approach to the Sabbath, we've got to start with his foundational teachings. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus explicitly tells us that he did not come to abrogate the law of God. In fact, he warns that until heaven and earth disappear, not even the smallest letter will disappear from the law. And because the Sabbath is essentially embedded right there in the Ten Commandments, his words structurally guarantee its perpetuity.
Let's pause for a second and look at the original language here, because it's a real game changer. The Greek word for fulfill used in that verse is plerou. Now, defining this word fundamentally shifts our whole paradigm. It does not mean to render void or to bring to an end. It actually means to perfectly embody the law, bringing it to its complete intended expression. Basically, he came to show us what keeping the Sabbath was always supposed to look like in the first place. And we see him brilliantly live this out. Luke 4:16 tells us that going to the synagogue on the Sabbath was his custom. The original language indicates this wasn't just, a sporadic missionary tactic to go find a crowd. It was his lifelong, structured habit of communal piety. He honored the seventh day by actively participating in the reading and the exposition of Scripture.
Section 3. Commandment versus human tradition, looking at the Greenfield controversy.
The absolute best way to see how he lived out his respect for the law is by looking at what he actually fought against. Take the famous grain-field controversy. When his disciples plucked heads of grain because they were hungry, they were acting entirely within the bounds of the written Torah, specifically Deuteronomy 23. But the Pharisees, they accused them of reaping and threshing. These were activities that were strictly forbidden by their man-made oral tradition known as halacha. Yeshua stepped in to defend his disciples by correcting those suffocating rules. He was proving that human need supersedes ritual technicalities, but he did it without negating the Torah itself.
Section 4. The Lord of the Sabbath. Healing, mercy, and freedom.
Beyond just defending his disciples, Yeshua points right back to Genesis with a profound clarification. Listen to what he says. The Sabbath was made for man. The Greek word there is anthropos, meaning humanity as a whole. It's a universal gift meant to ease human burdens. And when he declares himself Lord of the Sabbath, he's absolutely not claiming a right to abolish it. Think about it. To claim lordship over an institution is to claim the sovereign right to govern and protect it. As creator, he's guaranteeing the Sabbath's ongoing beneficial place within his kingdom.
And we see exactly how he protected it through this rapid, deliberate pattern of restorative action. Jesus systematically performed works of healing on the Sabbath. Now, at the time, the Pharisees taught that medical treatment was only lawful on the Sabbath if a life was in immediate danger. Jesus brazenly rejected this unbiblical restriction. For the man born blind, he purposely made clay, directly violating a rabbinic prohibition against kneading. For the bent woman, he used a brilliant lesser to greater argument. If you can untie an animal to water it on the Sabbath, shouldn't a suffering daughter of Abraham be loosed from bondage on God's holy day? He was proving, time and again, that doing good is the very essence of Sabbath keeping.
Section 5. Addressing common objections. Let's separate fact from theological fiction. It is so deeply important that we fairly and reverently tackle the most common theological misunderstandings about these events. For instance, a lot of sincere seekers wonder if Christ eventually authorized a transfer of holiness from the seventh day to the first day of the week. Did he actually establish a new day of worship?
Well, the stark scriptural reality is, there's just complete silence in the gospel narratives regarding this. Christ never commanded, hinted at, or authorized a change to the day of rest. If he had truly intended to abolish or transfer the Sabbath, there is absolutely zero record of him teaching that anywhere in the scriptures.
When we compare some of the other popular objections with the actual biblical text, a super clear picture emerges. Some say, well, Jesus broke the Sabbath, but he explicitly stated his actions were lawful. He only broke the oppressive oral traditions that had been falsely elevated to divine law. Others will say Jesus is our rest, so the physical day is abolished. And it is absolutely true that Jesus is our ultimate spiritual rest. That spiritual rest restores our communion with God, for sure. But the physical, weekly day, it remains a perpetual memorial of creation and a beautiful foretaste of the eternal rest that awaits believers.
Section 6. The true Edenic purpose. A holy sanctuary in time.
So, as we've clearly seen, the divine lawgiver did not come to dismantle his Father's moral law. Instead, he executed a divine rescue mission. Step 1 was stripping away all that legalistic fear that had completely choked the joy out of the day. Step 2 was restoring it as a time of healing, mercy, and freedom, like a vivid foretaste of the Messianic kingdom. And Step 3 was reclaiming its exquisite delight, pointing us right back to the Creator. He essentially reclaimed a holy sanctuary in time.
So, we want to leave you with this final, gentle invitation. We've seen today that Yeshua spent his ministry rigorously defending the proper way to observe the Sabbath, proving he never intended to cancel it. So ask yourself, if the Lord of the Sabbath went to such agonizing lengths to rescue and restore this day from the chains of tradition, could it be that this gift is still waiting for you to unwrap it today? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. And as always, keep seeking truth.